Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So let's talk about the structure of pollination. Before moving ahead into this, I'm trying to making a series about the sexual reproduction in flowering plants. So in these events, there are several events which used to occur in a particular flower in the sexually reproducing plant, that is in the flowering plants. So pre-fertilization events, I have already made videos. If you have not checked out, then please do check it out. Okay. In the pre-fertilization events, we have seen that the development of the male gametophyte by the process of microsporogenesis is occurring, and as well as the development of the female gametophyte with the help of megasporogenesis is occurring, right? Now, after the formation of the pollen grains, and once the pollen grains will be matured enough, that is very important that the pollen grain will fall on the stigma, and that is on the female part of the pistil, so that the male and female gametes can come close to each other. This is the idea of the sexual reproduction, because we know that fusion of the male and female gametes are the basic part of the sexual reproduction. So until and unless the pollen grain will come close to the stigma and the fusion between them will not occur, so sexual reproduction will not take place. That is why it is very important for the pollen grains to come close to the stigma, right? So that event is known as pollination. That means the mechanism by which pollen grains will come to the stigma and fall on the stigma, that event is called as pollination. Now, how the pollination will take place in a plant? There are several flowers on the earth. That is why the pollination event is also differentiating. There are different types of pollination which can take place. So, from our basic standards, we have already seen that there are two modes of pollination. One is considered as self-pollination, and the another one is considered as cross-pollination, right? So what is self-pollination? What is cross-pollination? In case of, there can be three events which can occur, right? Three events can occur. In the first event, what can occur? Pollen grains, after forming from the anther of the flower, that can fall on the stigma of the same flower. That can be the event number one. In the second event, the pollen grain, after forming in the anther, they can fall on the stigma of the other flower in the same plant. And in the third event, what can occur? The pollen grain can fall on the stigma of the other flower of the other plant of the same species. So in that way, differentiating events can occur. In the first case, what did I say just now? That right after the formation of the pollen grain, they can fall on the stigma. That is, maybe this is the anther and this was the flower, and on the flower, same flower, there is the stigma which is present. So this pollen grain will come and fall on the stigma of the same flower. So when this is happening, this type of pollination is happening, this is considered as autogamy. This event is considered as autogamy. This is also coming under the self-pollination. Second event, which did I say, that the pollen grain can fall from the flower, from one flower to maybe this is the flower, and if this is the plant body, then maybe there is another flower where the stigma is waiting actually, and the pollen grain can come and fall on the same flower of the same plant, another flower of the same plant. And this event can be considered as geitonogamy. Okay, this event can be considered as geitonogamy. So both of them are coming under self-pollination. So how can we define self-pollination event? That is, falling of the pollen grain from the stamen to the stigma of either the same flower or to the different flower of the same plant. That event is considered as self-pollination. In different types of bisexual flowers, we can find self-pollination event. Now let us move ahead into the next type, that is the third event, where we can find that in a flower there is the formation of the pollen grain, but there is no chance of falling on the stigma of the same plant. So what will happen? That will fall on the stigma of the other plant, that will go and fall on the stigma of the other plant of the same species. Same species is very important. This term is very important, same species. Okay, so pollen grain from one flower will go and fall on the stigma of the other flower of the another plant, but of the same species. That event is particularly considered as cross-pollination, as well as this can be considered as allogamy, or we can say this event as xenogamy also. Okay, so this is about the events of pollination, where we can find that two types of pollinations are mainly there: self-pollination, cross-pollination. In the self-pollination, two events can happen. Okay, two chances are there. Either the pollen grain will fall on the stigma of the same flower, or the pollen grain will be transferred to the stigma of the another flower of the same plant. So both of the events are considered as autogamy and geitonogamy respectively. But in the third event, third case, the flower which is producing anther, that will go and fall on the stigma of the another flower of the another plant, but of the same species. What is the meaning of that? Say for example, in case of China rose, in one plant the pollen grains are producing, and that will go and fall on the stigma of the another China rose flower. Okay, so that event is considered as cross-pollination or allogamy or xenogamy. So these are the different types of pollination. In my next video, I am going to discuss about what are the agents especially for the cross-pollination, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of self and cross-pollinations respectively. So keep on watching my videos. Thank you.